Hello all, hope you're all okay. Thank you for watching and subscribing. Thought we'd have a change today, so we're starting off where I've just delivered to, Hexham. Martin Oliver's of Hexham. And we're just about to leave. And now we're off to Hartlepool. Biffa, Hartlepool. Dirty tight yard this. Been here once before actually. Well, it's a nice day, sunny compared to yesterday.
Skulls and artifacts in this video are authentic from sites all around the globe. Feel free to share, but please do not download and respect the copyrights herein. Viewer discretion advised.
So tell me straight, Rabbi, have any powerful people attempted to bury this knowledge?
I tried to figure out where was the disconnect in history.
This video is about the Nephilim, a mystery that goes back even further than Babylon. Enjoy the ride. Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God went in to the daughters of men and bore children by them. These were the mighty ones of old, famous warriors of ancient times.
In all the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century, and then even the early Jewish commentators all stood on the same ground with this. Why is there such a disconnect? I researched something interesting. There was a second council in Constantinople from the early Roman Church. This was in 553.
Right.
AD. They decreed that the teachings of Origen, an early church writer, on the subject of angels should be heresy.
This guy here was found in Peru. And here's a little baby one from Peru. Take a look at that right there. Look at the little fingers on that going up that long head. And this, of course, is Siberia, Russia.
Enoch. This is where Enoch was rejected. This is where the early church fathers started becoming objective. And if you see something here really interesting, they go really far with this. They're even saying that men cannot be possessed of demons in any shape, form, or fashion.
Look at the size of the mallet on that one from Peru. He almost doesn't look friendly, does he? And this one here is from the sands of Iran. This is one of apparently about 20 from a dig site. Would you say there's anything at all about that guy there that doesn't look, I don't know, human? This one was found in Bolivia. Hold on to your seats. We're going to go over some unique features on these long heads in just a minute. Also found in Russia, Peru. The sheer mass on the back of some of these is astounding. Here's a child being held. Look at the size of that one in the middle. This may be the largest one in terms of head volume out of Peru. Now we're really starting to leave the it looks human range. This guy here was one of 13 found at a dig site in Mexico.
It's a biblical Hebrew text, and you start finding a lot of strange anomalies. You know, you read about giants when Moses sent the spies over into Canaan, and they described this land being filled full of giants. You know, when the spies come back, they said, you know, we're the size of grasshoppers compared to these men.
The word Nephilim often gets translated as giants. It is true there have been actual giants in history. This is Robert Wadlow. He's the tallest man ever officially recorded in this modern time period at 8 feet 11 inches. This photograph was taken by Roy Chapman Andrews during an expedition to Mongolia in 1922. The image ran one time in National Geographic magazine. It was never published in the magazine again.
Samuel's describing a guy with 6 fingers and toes, and he's not calling it a deformity. Now, you know, I've seen people with kind of a split toe, but it's a deformity. These are 6 working fingers and toes. I actually found an ancient picture from Babylon of a giant with 6 fingers and toes, and the giant is actually holding a lion, and he is so large that the lion is held like I would hold a cat. Like I'm saying, Trey, only if you're reading in the Hebrew are you going to see how deep this goes and how actually clear it is.
It is curious where the trail can begin to lead when looking at ancient bloodlines. When talking about the word Nephilim, what we're dealing with is a little bit deeper and darker and larger in scope than giantism, a really tall guy, or your favorite basketball player. The term Nephilim became synonymous with giants because that's what they tended to be. It is by no means limited to that meaning. In fact, the word Nephilim is more of an umbrella term for the hybrid children, creatures of any high strangeness, which are actual flesh and blood, biological products of the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the fallen angels.
Well, first, the word Nephilim is actually a plural from the Hebrew word nephal, fallen. And when you say Nephilim, you're basically saying
the fallen ones.
Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 2 says that when men began to increase the number of the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God.
The term sons of God, or the B'nai Ha-Elohim, can mean angels, fallen angels, or, in the book of Enoch, the watchers.
Sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them that they chose, and had children by them.
So at this moment, without going off of any of the physical evidence, and before taking a really deep look at these skulls, or peering into the history, and just using the text alone, in any authentic text, whether you're dealing with actual angels or you're talking about fallen angels, these are not Hallmark card creatures. These are extremely powerful entities. Angels often get depicted in artwork with wings. Now, the Ark of the Covenant does have 2 cherubim depicted with wings over the mercy seat. But, key term here, these angels are representing the cherubim at the throne of God in heaven. But I can't find one spot in the entirety of the Greek or Hebrew biblical texts where angels, dimensional beings, B'nai Ha-Elohim, stepping through into this reality, had wings. From the angels at the tomb of Jesus Christ, no wings. All the way back to Genesis, to the angels that visited Abraham, to the angel that dropped the chains from Peter's wrists and said, "Get up and come with me." Every iron locked door opening before their path, and soldiers seeming to fall by the wayside, unconscious. Peter had some clout with someone somewhere that night. The soldiers that had fallen asleep woke up to be executed the very next day. The truth is, there are wealths of these throughout the text. The helping hand that seems to arrive in extremely particular moments when all hope might otherwise seem lost, or messengers appearing to announce highly specific events in human history, events and moments that would change everything. You know, it almost reads like someone sort of guiding how all this comes out. One of the most stunning discoveries of the 20th century is that the entirety of the universe is finite. That's actually extremely powerful knowledge. Reality can appear solid, but in truth, it's 99.9% empty space. The base framework of reality itself, at the deepest quantum level, is not made of matter, but of little statistical probabilities appearing wherever they need to appear next. Even the majestic ticking minutes of time itself are quantized at 10 to the negative 43 seconds. And every single three-dimensional particle pixel of this place is not random. In fact, they're 10 to the negative 33 centimeters. The fabric of reality is finite, almost like a pure data live stream, and it's not random. That's extremely powerful knowledge. It was Albert Einstein who once said, reality is merely an illusion. When you hear the physics guys talking about the universe as a hologram, or saying that our reality is a simplified projection of a much more complex reality, or saying that time, space, and matter are synthetic, I don't know if I like the term projection. It seems far too limiting. Or mathematicians who might say that the whole place appears to be a product of mathematics, which our mathematics are extremely inadequate to describe. It is true that a created thing can never understand the full scope of who created it. Bottom line, that this place is couched in a much larger spiritual and dimensional reality. These are the words of Paul when writing to the Hebrews. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for some have entertained angels unaware. How can a spiritual being, an angel, or even a whole set of fallen angels, give actual birth to its own genetic line of anomalies? How can something spiritual, dimensional, interact with something physical? I'm not sure that the lines are quite that black and white.
Fibergel helps break the cycle of constipation and get you back to regularity. Find your groove.
Are quite that black and white. It was Jude, the half-brother of Jesus Christ. Mind you, this comes right before Jude quotes from Enoch 1:9. Enoch would be the seventh from Adam, the great-grandfather of Noah in the book of Genesis. Genesis 5:24, and Enoch was not, for God took him. God really liked Enoch. And so Jude is saying, even the angels, which kept not their first estate, angels there is talking about fallen angels. The term kept not their first estate has a dual meaning in that sentence. Not just that they left the heavens but they're physical bodies for earthly flesh and material bodies. Jude continues, but left their own habitation he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. These are actual fragments from the book of Enoch, found in the caves of Qumran in Israel, dating anywhere between 100 to 400 BC. And of course, the most famous document and record to come out of those caves was this actual image of a scroll of Isaiah found in those caves, which had scholars literally holding their breath until they found out that every single word has an exact precision matching our current text that is uncanny. This applies to all of the Hebrew texts, by the way, even the Greek Jewish texts. The fragments from the book of Enoch matched up perfectly with copies found by explorer James Bruce in complete Ethiopian Bibles in 1773. The book of Enoch is divided into 5 sections. It's in the Book of the Watchers, where the bulk of the Qumran fragments come from. Then Enoch is telling you that a set of 200 fallen angels made physical entrance to this place. This would have been prior to the flood of Noah, as Enoch was the great-grandfather of Noah. In fact, this would have been more than 1,000 years before Noah, as Methuselah, the longest living man ever recorded in the biblical text, lived 969 years. If you do the math on it, Methuselah actually died the very year, or 7 days, before the flood. Curiously, the name Methuselah means his death shall bring, or perhaps more precisely, his death shall bring the judgment. Speaking of strange skulls, skulls like this one here are what the archaeological community often refer to as Neanderthal skulls, like this actual image of a Neanderthal skull on the screen here. Now, there are all sorts of variation, shapes, and sizes of monkey bones on the planet Earth. Monkeys and humans are grandly different in their bone structures. This is a human skeleton, and this is a set of monkey bones, like this actual bone structure of a gorilla on the screen right here. Out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of both human bones and monkey bones, such as the infamous skeletal structure of the small monkey Lucy, seen on the screen here, on the entire face of the whole planet Earth, there are exactly 0 mixtures of half human, half monkey, or monkeys becoming humans. Or the more commonly used terminology, there are no missing links. This doesn't come as terribly surprising to me, because genetically speaking, within the DNA of any living, breathing organism, animals are restricted within their animal kinds. They have certain body plans. For example, horses can breed other variations of horses within their body plans. Same thing with dogs. They can have subtypes underneath that body plan and variations, but dogs cannot breed rabbits or horses. Taking the genetics one step further, every living organism, its digital software coding, its actual DNA, is losing coding over time. It's weakening, deteriorating. It's not just animal species that we are systematically and slowly losing, not gaining, in the order of 1,000 to 10,000 different creatures annually, depending on whose numbers that you listen to, but we're certainly losing things as opposed to gaining them. And following suit with that, the DNA, the actual digital software of life itself for every type of creature is also weakening with every generation. The same as would happen is if you make a copy of 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 anything, you're going to see it weaken, not strengthen. A Neanderthal skeleton and skull is absolutely identical to a modern human, except for a few key features. The bones are thicker, stronger, more fit. Also, the wisdom teeth down here fit absolutely perfectly. His thick brows can vary in size from skull to skull. A small detail that a lot of people may not know, the human brow of any individual, this bone right up here, continues to grow just ever so slightly through the entirety of a person's life. You may see on an old man's brow, he's got a very defined brow. So if you were to live 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 years, then that much larger brow that you see indenting up right there is precisely how your skull would look. When we peer back in history to our oldest written texts, we're finding redundant accounts of very long lifespans. In the biblical texts, most absolutely and definitely in the Sumerian Kings list, as well as records covering what amounts to little more than settlements following the Great Flood, as is recorded here in the Epic of Gilgamesh, along with the extended lifespans, both before and briefly after the flood. This is the oldest written epic in the entire world. The actual records of King Gilgamesh of Uruk, one of the first kings following the Great Flood. These Neanderthal skulls have varying sizes of large brows. In short, what you're looking at with these Neanderthal skulls is eerily identical to what a human being would look like if they were much more fit than we are today and had lived varying amounts of hundreds and hundreds of years. From a genetic perspective, no one actually knows what causes death or initiates the death process, capping us out at anywhere between 100 and 120 years. Almost as if someone flicked a switch off inside the coding. Every single cell in your entire body is programmed to regenerate and renew itself. But when dealing with the topic of the Nephilim, we are by no means talking about elongated ears and larger brows, stronger bodies and wisdom teeth that fit perfect like a glove, the extremely long years resting on the large brow of the forehead. Nor are we fiddling around with old monkey bones. The truth, however, is that there are a lot of human-esque bones on this planet which can very easily, even to trained experts, blur the lines between was it human or was it something else. Now, there are a lot of tribes that have done varieties of things to their bodies to achieve a number of different effects, including the binding of the skull to produce this elongated shape on the back of the head. There are some significant differences, however, between even the best of clearly modified skulls, like this skull on the screen here, and skulls that appear significantly larger and much more naturally formed than that, like this actual elongated skull being compared against the bust of either Nefertiti or Akhenaten's daughter, leading many to ask if these tribesmen originally began binding babies' heads in an attempt to copy something that was perhaps a whole lot larger in scope, like this actual skull found in Peru. Some of these are just absolutely massive. There are hundreds and hundreds of them, wildly massive, including children that already have the features. One of the first red flags that you're dealing with something that is incredibly strange is that the actual head volume of the elongated skull is at least 25% larger in its head volume than a regular human or even an old human skull. These are in fact quite different. But it's not just that they absolutely have to be enormously massive. There's another difference on just the skulls themselves, which is even more puzzling than that. Every human skull on every single human being should have these two plates in the back of the skull that are clearly divided between the two of them by this crease running towards the back of the head. This elongated skull, however, is not like that, with the crease and the two plates in the back. This skull has one long crease, very defined here, a crease coming back this way, and one very large skull cap. Binding a little baby's head should most certainly not change the genetic bone structure. But it's not just elongated heads we're talking about. We're also talking about giants, like this Thailand image holding the enormous sword and the two fangs or tusks coming out of the mouth. Now, I do believe that's a Babylonian Ishtar right there, depicted as a circular disc, which these three gentlemen are bringing before this very large character. Babylon, particularly ancient Babylon, plays perhaps a critical role in all this. Just second down from Babylon would be Egypt.
Meet Bob. Bob is fat-free, not even 1%, but it still tastes like semi-skimmed milk. Isn't that great? Yeah, party on, Bob. Arla Bob, skimmed milk that tastes like semi.
Down from Babylon would be Egypt. After the Hebrews were in the wilderness during the time of the tabernacle and about to enter the promised land, in Numbers 13:33 it says this, "And there we saw the giants, the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who were of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers before them." Now there are some tribes where God told the Hebrews, just conquer the people. And then there are other tribes where God specified, wipe them all out, as if there's some type of a gene pool problem, as is in the case of the Canaanites, the Raphites, the Ammonites, all of which are listed as giants. And then you've got other types of tribes, like for example, the Amalekites.
The first part of Amalekite means people. The second part of that of Amalekite, it's an ancient word in Semitic languages that means vampire-like demon. These Amalekites were not human. And a lot of people believe that this is where the vampire legends came from in Romania. And I'm sure the Israelites well knew this by looking at them. I mean, if the Amalekites are considered a vampire-like demon, you know, I'm sure they probably had the features.
Deuteronomy 3:11. Only King Og of Bashan, the giant, was left remaining of the Raphites, the Ammonites, or so the Hebrews believed. But the truth is, giants have been reported in archaeological finds all across the globe, particularly in the United States, which is what most every one of these news articles right here going down the screen are about. Many of them from the New York Times. Some bones are still available, however, like this actual image of a jawbone recovered from a giant skeleton in Nevada that's being compared to a human jawbone on the screen. How large do you think that skeleton actually was? Or the Indian legend of the red-headed giants. Interesting about Indian legends, the symbol of the how is often said to ensure that the other guy does not have 6 fingers. Or the famous serpent mounds in Ohio, where in the 1800s it's reported that skeletons of enormous giants were found around this site that has the shape of an enormous serpent that they mysteriously built, which can only truly be seen well from the air. Following the 1950s and the defeat of Nazi Germany and eugenics, same time period that Americans began pumping out movies about space invaders and men coming from other planets, and deeply religious views of the occult, such as those of Blavatsky, instrumental in the occult beliefs of Adolf Hitler himself, sort of take a sidestep into the shadows. Articles such as these begin to dry up and disappear in roughly about the 1950s. And the skeletons seem to vanish. Many make the strong case that the bone structures disagree with the political formulation of the theory of evolution. Whereas that may be true, there are others who would argue that it's somewhat deeper than that. Speaking of occult, if I shift my attention over in the direction of ancient Egypt, the place that occasionally had kings with very unusual skulls, like this actual imagery here, done using the skull of King Akhenaten. Here's the skull of the 18th dynasty King Akhenaten without any digital effects on it. This piece of artwork is female, believed by many to be Akhenaten's daughter. Here is his son, the child king, in this x-ray on the screen here. The very infamous King Tut, who also had this family had very unique features, long head, in all of the drawings of himself, like this actual drawing of Akhenaten. Notice the crown is very elongated, and the strange shape of the body. And this is the wife Nefertiti, carved in stone. This king moved the most powerful palace in all of Egypt to rule over an area called Amarna, to take the pinnacle of power and throne of the empire from Thebes and Abydos and the land of the old gods, all the way up here to a newly prospering place called Amarna, which is directly across the Red Sea from Sinai. Curious thing about the ruins of this particular dig site, it has a reported 365 outdoor altars, the practice of worship of one god, a mesmerizing place stretching into the horizon, and it's an entirely well-drawn community, all three of which are not Egyptian practices, they're Hebrew practices. One thing that Akhenaten and his son, King Tut, both proved is that even god kings can die. Both were killed with remarkably similar bashes in their long heads. I personally think that the Visor Eye did it in cahoots with the head military general Ramses, great-grandfather of Ramses the Great. But I wasn't there, and the statute of limitations has run. Akhenaten, shown here with the serpent coming out of his forehead, and his son Tut were the final kings of the 18th dynasty, later giving rise to the 19th dynasty king, Ramses the Great, immortalized in this statue here, who many believe was the pharaoh at the time of the Exodus. Mernptah, depicted here, standing next to Ra, with the disc encapsulated by the serpent. Mernptah was the next king to take the throne of Egypt after Ramses. He was also the 13th son of Ramses the Great. On his victory stele, depicted right here, makes a strange statement. The people of Israel is laid waste. Their crops are not. I have no idea what that means. Just because your dad, Ramses, hands you an empire, missing at least half of its army and all of its slaves, you can't go getting all bent out of shape about that. But if I am to hop way backwards in time, that 200 fallen angels recorded as having come in prior to the flood, which is really what's being referred to when you hear terms like mystery religion. Notice the star inside of the golden jewel-covered crescent. Covered in the book of Enoch, alluded to in the book of Genesis, as well as many parts of both the Old and New Testament, as well as ancient texts and hieroglyphs that we'll look at, and writings all across the ancient world, being recorded in large scale prior to the flood, and then in a smaller trickle of a scale following the flood. There are at least 277 flood stories from cultures stretching every conceivable part of the globe. Some of them bringing you right to the front doorstep of that flood, like the Epic of Gilgamesh from 2700 to 2900 BC. Every mountain range on Earth contains fish fossils, marine life, and even seashells found on top of Mount Everest in the Himalayas, extending to include mass beached whale graveyards, turning up in the middle of deserts, like this classic example here of the mass whale graveyard in Chile, the most arid desert in the world. And here's another whale dig site from the other side of the globe in the sand of Egypt. Look at the size of that whale buried in that desert there. Plant and animals are found buried and fossilized in every single layer and strata of the top layers of the earth. Creatures of every possible kind of animal that we see every day are found mixed in underneath the earth, along with mammoth-sized creatures, which don't seem to be around anymore. And these animals of every genre and flavor are often found in mass graveyards, like this actual dinosaur graveyard seen on the screen here, as if the animals were herding, and whatever happened fast, hit all at once, and was unexpected. Strangely, when dealing with strata, it is sifted by sediments exactly as one would expect. There were a lot of water pumping around on the surface of the